Have you ever been on an epic road trip? I'm talking hours spent crammed in a car or bus with people, and you're playing road trip games, or you're watching a movie, you're sitting in the back seat, you're filming TikToks, whatever it is that you're doing. Or if you've been around a while, maybe you think of summer camp from a year or two ago when our Southern California campuses drove 18 hours, or was it 20? From Anaheim to Colorado, and the bus broke down like 100 times, and it was awful and fun at the same time. Probably more emphasis on awful, but it was fun. Now, the last couple weeks, we've started with a question so everyone can get to know each other. You get to know people pretty well on a road trip. So let's get creative here. Pretend you're going like on a 20-hour car ride, and you can bring 3 people with you. Okay, it can be a friend or family member that you know now. Maybe it's a celebrity that you don't know but you wish you knew, an athlete or whoever. Okay, so spend the next few minutes and talk about who you're bringing with you. Hey, I hope you had a great discussion, and I promise that has something to do with what we're focusing on tonight. Now remember, we've been using this metaphor of life as a race. And the key word to run well in life's race is something called discipleship. And Jesus calls us to be his disciples. But what's a disciple? Well, to put simply, discipleship is an imitator. It's a learner or a student. So we look to Jesus to show us the best path to run. And what's similar about a road trip and discipleship? Well, they both involve Sour Patch Kids and Spotify. Well, yes and no, okay? My discipleship involves Spotify and Sour Patch Kids, okay? But that's not the main point. Discipleship is a journey, and so is a road trip. And for today, I want to focus on the road trips are more fun and likely more effective when you have people journeying with you. And it's the same exact way with discipleship. And in the race of life, like right now, August 2020, well, we're at a crossroads. And Apple Maps or Google Maps or Waze or whatever you use can't make the decision for us. You see, we have to choose, right? Because for some of us, school is starting as early as tomorrow, and the rest of you in the coming weeks. And it's going to be a much different school year than we've ever had before. And as students and parents and coaches, we all have a decision to make. Will we journey together or alone? And I know some of you, you're going to school online, so it may seem like you have no choice but to go alone. And I want to encourage you tonight with something. You see, the Apostle Paul, in a letter to people in a place called Ephesus, which is modern-day Turkey, he writes 3 verses. And I'm going to go fast, but the hope would be that this makes for a great discussion for you and your group, and we can see how we can actually not be alone in this season. He says this: I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. You see, Paul talks about the journey, the road trip of life. He calls himself a prisoner of the Lord, which is a weird place to start and kind of took me off guard the first time I read it. But the truth was, right now, as he's writing, Paul is in jail. He's in prison. And in fact, he wrote Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, and Philemon from a Roman prison. And you can just imagine Paul sitting in a dark, damp jail cell, writing the stuff that God was speaking to him as his journey in discipleship led him to imprisonment for his faith. And yet he says here, look, even though my chains may be Roman, my service is to God. Even though my circumstance may be dark at the moment. And he talks about the journey. He says, I'm going to walk in a manner worthy of the calling. And the calling is to follow Jesus, to be a disciple of Jesus. Now, what does that look like? Look, lists are super helpful for me. And I can see if you're ever stuck or you're looking for a helpful verse, look for a list in the Bible, and Paul gives us one here. What does it look like to walk well? He gives us 3 things. He says, look, with humility, with gentleness, and with patience. See, I'm going to make sure that my life isn't about me. I'm going to care for others. When I'm frustrated with my parents in this season, all stuck under one roof during quarantine, when I wish I could be at school in person, I'll be patient. When speaking with a friend I disagree with about politics or masks and what role they play in our world, well, I'll be gentle. When tempted to make it about me, I'll be humble. And then he continues, it says, bearing with one another in love. And that word bear, it means to hold up, like to sustain, to endure. And Paul says, you hold each other up, to sustain each other with what? With love. And then he finishes with this simple statement, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Shackled in a jail cell, Paul says the only thing I'm bonded by is peace. How? Because I have the unity of the Spirit of God, which brings up a great question. How can he be unified if he's alone in a jail cell? But even though Paul was alone in a jail cell, he wasn't really alone. How? Because you are never alone as a disciple of Jesus. He talks about the unity of the Spirit that we have when we follow Jesus and know him as our Lord. Guys, you don't have to do this season alone. You see, because right now you're actually sitting, yes, you're sitting in a home or you're watching online in a Zoom call, but you are sitting in a movement that has spread the last 2,000 years on the idea of unity in the Spirit, built on together. And the wonder of Jesus is that when he showed up, yes, he made things right between God and you, God and me, but he also made it possible for us to care about the person next to us. And you are never alone as a follower of Jesus. So when you feel lonely, be bold. Reach out to someone in your small group. For God's sakes, pick up your phone when your small group leader calls. Quit leaving them on red, please, because they care about you. Commit to house groups every single week, not so you can have perfect attendance, but because you know that as a disciple, you are never alone, and these people surrounding you right now care. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. The reason I do this is because the best relationships of my life come from my dynamics and environments just like this. I didn't fall in love with Jesus in a church. It was in a backyard. And look, in your group tonight, I'm not expecting you to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But maybe you can decide that you'll depend on these folks in the next season. And God could surprise you with where he takes this. We care about you more than you know. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.